What if Snape survived the war? Nagini's bite is bad, but Snape has been brewing anti-venom in his office for years on the off chance Voldemort ever decided he'd outlived his usefulness. Harry finds him in the Shrieking Shack a few minutes earlier than the original story allows, gets the memories, and also gets him to St. Mungo's before the venom finishes the job. He wakes up 3 days later as a war hero, which is approximately the worst possible outcome for a man who spent 2 decades cultivating the persona of a deeply unpleasant double agent. Harry tells everyone the truth at the trials. The Order backs it up. Suddenly, the most hated professor in Hogwarts history is being called the bravest man Harry Potter ever knew on the front page of the Daily Prophet. And Snape has to read it over breakfast. The wizarding world cannot agree on what to do with him. Half the country wants him knighted. The other half wants him in Azkaban for every Death Eater meeting he ever attended, every curse he ever cast in front of Voldemort to maintain cover, every student he ever made cry in potions. Parents of dead Order members write open letters. Former students testify on both sides. The Wizengamot holds hearings that drag on for the better part of a year, and Snape sits through every single one of them with the same expression he used to use on Neville. He's eventually cleared, given an Order of Merlin he refuses to wear, and offered his old job back, which he turns down on the spot. He leaves Britain by the end of the year, settles in a quiet coastal town under a name nobody recognizes, and spends the rest of his life brewing potions for Muggle pharmacists who have absolutely no idea who he is. What if Snape never overheard the prophecy? The barman at the Hogshead catches Snape outside the door before Trelawney even gets to the important part. Snape gets thrown into the alley with nothing useful to report, and Voldemort never learns that a child born at the end of July is supposed to end him. The Potters are never targeted. Snape stays a Death Eater because he has no reason not to. Lily is alive, married to James, raising Harry in a house he'll never be invited to, and the only thing left in his life is the cause that gave him status when nothing else did. He's good at it. Voldemort's first war drags on years longer than it should, and Lily Potter ends up in the middle of the Resistance because she's brilliant, furious, and genuinely terrifying when motivated. She's the one who eventually puts the pieces together about the Horcruxes. She's the one who leads the team that hunts them down, and in the final battle, in a duel that becomes the kind of story children grew up hearing about, she takes Voldemort down herself with a curse he doesn't see coming. Snape dies in that same battle, on the wrong side of the field, hit by a stray spell from someone he never saw. Lily learns about it from a casualty list a few days later. She remembers him as a boy from Cokeworth who chose the worst possible side and stayed there. And that's where her thinking on Severus Snape ends. She never finds out he loved her, and she never had any particular reason to wonder. What if Snape refused to kill Dumbledore? On the astronomy tower with Dumbledore already dying, Snape lowers his wand. The unbreakable vow doesn't activate. The vow was about protecting Draco, not finishing the job himself. A technicality Snape figured out months earlier. Snape puts himself between Draco and the Death Eaters, and together with Dumbledore they take the tower back inside a minute. Bellatrix is the only one who makes it out, sprinting through the school and across the grounds before anyone can stop her, and she goes straight to Voldemort. So Voldy knows Snape switched sides and Draco is behind Hogwarts wards. Dumbledore calls in the Order and locks down every ward in the castle. With Snape and Draco both out of reach, Voldemort decides to kill Draco himself, which means going after Lucius and Narcissa first. Snape gets to Malfoy Manor before he does, warns Narcissa, and offers her the same protection. She takes it in under a minute. Lucius refuses to leave the only world he knows, and Voldemort kills him within the week as a public reminder of what defection costs. Dumbledore is still dying from the ring curse, but with time to plan, he pulls his brother Aberforth out of the Hog's Head and into the war. The final battle plays out differently with 2 Dumbledores in it. Aberforth duels Bellatrix in the Great Hall and finishes her himself, which means Molly Weasley keeps her temper and her son both. Fred lives. Dobby lives too, because the Malfoys never become the safe house he has to die rescuing prisoners from. Half the casualty list simply doesn't happen. The war still ends at Hogwarts, just Hogwarts, with significantly more people walking out of it than before. What if Snape never became a Death Eater? Alright, let's rewind. 5th year, the afternoon by the lake. James and Sirius are supposed to humiliate Snape in front of half the school. In canon, this is the moment that kills his friendship with Lily and pushes him straight to the Death Eaters. But it never happens. They can't find him. He's 2 floors up in the girls' bathroom brewing illegal potions with Moaning Myrtle as moral support. Narcissa Black finds him there. 6th year prefect already half engaged to a man she can barely stand, doing rounds when she hears something steaming that absolutely shouldn't be. She walks in expecting to dock points and walks out 3 hours later having watched Severus Snape brew something even Slughorn couldn't. She comes back the next week. It becomes a routine. 2 outcasts, an absurd amount of potion fumes, and a friendship that takes a year and a half to turn into something else. By the time Narcissa is meant to marry Lucius Malfoy, she's called it off in 3 letters, and one truly memorable scene at her own engagement party. Snape marries Narcissa the summer after Hogwarts. The Death Eaters reach out and he doesn't take the meeting. Voldemort has nothing on offer that beats a quiet life with Narcissa. They have a son. They name him Draco Snape. Lucius marries Bellatrix on the rebound, and that household is exactly as warm and stable as it sounds. The Potters still die, because the prophecy reaches Voldemort through someone else, but the war runs differently without his most talented potions master in the ranks, and with a Bellatrix whose loyalty now has competition at home. What if Snape saved Lily? Remember when Harry sees Snape's memories after he dies? In that scene, Snape arrives at Godric's Hollow too late. Lily already dead, James gone, Snape breaking down over her body in the wreckage. This time he gets there earlier. He arrives at the Potter's door at midnight, tells them Voldemort is coming, and gives them the lead time canon never did. They run. James buys his family the seconds they need by holding the front hallway alone, and dies the way he always was going to die, wand drawn in front of his son. Lily apparates with him from the back garden and lands at Spinner's End an hour later, the one place Voldemort would never check. Snape opens the door and doesn't try to explain himself. There's nothing he could say to a woman who just watched her husband die, so he puts the kettle on instead. She stays. The forgiveness never quite lands. Lily is too sharp for that, but the safest place in Britain for the boy who lived turns out to be the home of the man who told Voldemort about him in the first place. Harry grows up in Spinner's End, calling Snape something close to a stepfather. Lily spends the rest of the war as the Resistance most dangerous wand. James gets a headstone in Godric's Hollow that the 3 of them visit every year, and nobody ever tells Harry the man who raised him was the reason it's there. What if Snape raised Harry? Dumbledore turns up at Spinner's End on a Tuesday with a 1-year-old in his arms and a speech ready about duty and second chances. Snape doesn't let him finish. He takes the child, closes the door, and spends the next 17 years discovering that raising the son of the woman you loved and the man you hated is its own particular kind of life sentence. The first year nearly breaks him. Every time Harry laughs, it's Lily. Every time he gets stubborn, it's James. So Snape does the only thing he knows how to do, buries it, locks it behind occlumency walls, and starts teaching Harry to do the same before Harry can spell his own name. By 6, Harry can shield his thoughts. By 9, he can read the surface of someone else's. By 11, he walks into Hogwarts as the most dangerous first year in the castle, and Snape has accidentally raised him into the perfect weapon against a Dark Lord who hasn't even returned yet. Quirrell's hidden master gets clocked within a week. The diary, the rat, all of it gets caught early because Harry sees through people the way most kids see through windows. Slytherin takes him in and Draco hates the competition. The war that should have lasted 7 years ends in 3 with significantly fewer funerals. Snape lives long enough to watch Harry graduate, which means he lives long enough to feel exactly how much Lily would have loved this version of her son. He never says it out loud. He didn't have to. Harry was reading him the whole time. What if Snape was sorted into Gryffindor? Picture this. The Sorting Hat shouts Gryffindor, and Severus Snape walks over to sit directly across from James Potter. Same dormitory, same breakfast table for 7 years. The rivalry that played out across 2 separate towers in canon now has no distance at all, and it gets uglier faster. Without Slytherin, Snape loses a community, people who recognized his particular brand of intelligence, who shared his interest in the magic everyone else found uncomfortable. Gryffindor gives him nothing, so Lily watches the bullying escalate year by year, sees it closer than she ever did in canon. canon, and starts feeling sorry for Snape somewhere around 5th year. She lets him apologize after the lake incident. He means it. By the time they leave Hogwarts, Snape has somewhere to belong that isn't a Death Eater recruiting pool. He joins the Order. James, who eventually grows up enough to apologize for who he was at 16, gets close enough that the Potters name Snape Harry's godfather. Sirius takes it about as well as you'd expect. The Potters still die anyway. Snape was never inside Voldemort's circle and never could have warned them, and the rest of the canon plays out the same. Sirius framed, Harry on a Surrey doorstep, 14 years of waiting. Snape spends every one of those years being a godfather in the abstract, until the night Harry needs him at the Department of Mysteries. This time Snape falls through the veil, taking the curse meant for his godson. Sirius lives. Harry loses the closest thing to family he has left, and never gets to know that the man who died saving him was the same boy his mother once stopped speaking to by a lake. What if Lily chose Snape? By the lake in 5th year, the moment that ended everything in the original story simply doesn't happen. Snape catches himself before the word leaves his mouth, apologizes like a person who actually means it, and Lily decides to give him the chance she always was quietly wanted to give him anyway. They graduate together, marry quietly somewhere that doesn't involve James Potter throwing rice, and have a son they name Harry Snape. The prophecy doesn't care about last names. Voldemort still hears the part of it that matters, still arrives at their door, and still meets a mother willing to die in front of her child. Lily's sacrifice works the way it always would have. The ancient magic doesn't ask for paperwork. Severus dies beside her. Harry survives with a scar and absolutely nobody left. Petunia takes one look at the Snape-shaped infant on her doorstep and slams the door. But Dumbledore needs Harry behind blood wards, so a compromise gets worked out. The Dursleys keep him during the school year, and the Malfoys, practically family to Severus, take him for the holidays. 11 summers at Malfoy Manor, and Harry knows exactly what he is long before any Hogwarts letter arrives. Narcissa teaches him etiquette, Lucius teaches him politics, and Draco grows up next to him as something between a brother and a rival who hexes him over breakfast. By 9, Harry can throw curses most grown wizards can't pronounce. The Sorting Hat takes 1 second. Slytherin. Voldemort, freshly returned through Quirrell, watches a Snape by name and a Malfoy by upbringing walk into his house, and decides to play the long game. Harry takes the mark in 5th year and means every syllable. He fights on the wrong side of the war and lands in Azkaban with a sentence long enough to outlive the people who put him there. Lily died saving the wrong version of her son. What if Snape told Harry the truth early? Sometime in Harry's 1st year, Snape pulls him aside after a potions lesson and tells him everything. The prophecy, Lily, the debt, the reason behind every detention and every cutting remark. Harry, 11 and starving for any adult who'll be honest with him, believes him. The hatred everyone expected to define them for 7 years simply doesn't form. They cooperate. By 3rd year, they're meeting weekly, and Harry trusts Snape more than he trusts anyone except Ron and Hermione. The problem is the scar. The connection in Harry's head is leaking everything he sees and hears straight back to Voldemort, and Harry has no occlumency training to stop it. Snape tries to teach him, but the trust between them makes Harry too relaxed in those sessions to ever build a real wall. Voldemort can see Snape sitting across from Harry and see the strategy meetings, the maps, the names. The most valuable double agent in the war is being broadcast live to the enemy, and nobody in the room knows it. Voldemort doesn't move on the information. He plays it. He starts feeding Snape false intelligence at Death Eater meetings. A fake Horcrux location here, a wrong rumor about Nagini there. Knowing every word will reach Harry by the end of the week and Dumbledore by morning. The Order spends 2 years chasing ghosts. By the time Snape realizes what's been happening, Harry has already led an expedition to a cave that doesn't contain what he thinks it does. And Voldemort is waiting inside it. Harry dies in that cave. Snape dies trying to get him out. The trust that should have saved them both became the exact mechanism that killed them. Voldemort wins the war on the back of one honest conversation. What if Snape was Harry's father? Lily picks Severus over James in 7th year, marries him quietly 2 summers later, and dies in the hallway at Spinner's End with a 1-year-old wrapped in her arms. Snape gets to the house an hour after Voldemort vanishes and pulls his son out of the rubble, with hands that won't stop shaking. He takes Harry, disappears from Britain entirely, and starts planning something that doesn't fit inside anyone's larger strategy. For 10 years, nobody knows where they are. Snape raises Harry across half a continent: Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, anywhere with old magic and quiet villages, and turns him into something the wizarding world has never seen before: a weapon, designed specifically for one target. Harry learns occlumency before he learns to ride a bike. He learns dark arts because Snape has decided that fighting Voldemort cleanly is a luxury they can't afford. By 11, Harry can duel adult wizards. By 13, he can win. Voldemort returns through Quirrell and immediately starts hearing rumors about a boy and his father moving through Europe, destroying his old hiding places. Horcruxes start vanishing one by one before Voldemort even fully has his body back. He sends Death Eaters after them, and the Death Eaters don't come. The final confrontation happens at Spinner's End, because Snape has a sense of symmetry. Harry kills Voldemort at 14 in the same hallway where his mother died, with his father standing behind him. He never sets foot in Hogwarts, and he never meets the kids who would have been his closest friends in another life. The wizarding world wakes up one morning to find the war over. Nobody can quite explain who finished it. Snape and Harry are gone again by lunch. What if Snape never learned occlumency? Snape returns to Voldemort at the end of the first year already a double agent for Dumbledore, with one critical gap in his preparation. Occlumency was the skill he kept meaning to master and never quite did. Brilliant at potions, brilliant at dueling, fluent in dark magic most adults wouldn't recognize on a page. And somehow the one thing that was supposed to keep him alive got pushed to next month every month for 15 years. Voldemort returns through Quirrell during Harry's first year and calls his Death Eaters back to the graveyard a few years later. Snape arrives, kneels, and Voldemort looks at him for approximately 4 seconds before reading every secret behind his eyes, like text on a page. Voldemort reads the meetings with Dumbledore, the Order's locations, the plans for Harry. All of it in one calm sweep. The execution happens in front of every Death Eater present, slowly, over the course of an hour, as a lesson about what happens to people who think they're cleverer than the Dark Lord. Word reaches Hogwarts by morning through Death Eaters who deliberately let it leak, because Voldemort wants Dumbledore to know exactly what he's lost. Dumbledore loses the architecture of his entire plan along with his spy. Snape was supposed to deliver the truth about the Horcrux in Harry's head when the time came. Supposed to slip Harry the memory in a pensieve. Supposed to be the bridge between what Dumbledore knew and what Harry needed. With him gone, Harry walks toward the final battle carrying a piece of Voldemort's soul nobody has told him about. Harry dies in the Forbidden Forest believing the curse will save the school. The Horcrux inside him survives. Voldemort wins the war without ever quite understanding why it was so easy. What if Dumbledore never trusted Snape? Snape arrives at the top of the Hogwarts grounds in late 1980, soaking wet, half mad with grief, ready to trade everything he is for the chance to save Lily Evans. Dumbledore looks at him for a long moment, the mark on his arm, the prophecy he just delivered, the years of friendship with people who are now openly Death Eaters, and decides this man cannot be trusted with the life of a child. He turns him away at the gates. Snape leaves the grounds and goes back to Voldemort that same night, rejected by the only person he thought might still see something worth saving, and returns to the Death Eaters with the kind of commitment that only comes from having tried the other path and been refused. Voldemort welcomes him back, promotes him, and gains the most useful follower he's ever had, a brilliant potions master with a personal grudge against Albus Dumbledore. The Potters die on schedule. Voldemort falls the same night, but the Order of the Phoenix has no source inside the Inner Circle, no warning system, and the surviving Death Eaters scatter into the dark with their plans intact. When Voldemort returns through Quirrell, Snape is teaching defense at Hogwarts under deep cover for the Dark Lord, slipped into the post by a quiet word from Lucius Malfoy, whose ministry connections turn out to run deeper than the Order ever assumed. Instead of fighting Quirrell for the stone, Snape quietly clears his path, and Voldemort gets his body back ahead of schedule. Then Snape makes the move he's been planning for 15 years. The night Voldemort raises a goblet of the elixir of life, Snape is the one who hands it to him, and the cup contains everything except eternal life. Lesson learned. Never let your potions master pour your celebratory drinks. Severus Snape takes command of the Inner Circle, claims the empty throne, and becomes the new Dark Lord, with significantly better organizational skills and an actual nose. Every version of Snape, hero, villain, Dark Lord, always ends up back at Hogwarts. But Hogwarts isn't the only school out there. So that's your next lesson. All 11 wizarding schools in Harry Potter Explained. Click now before McGonagall catches you eyeing the competition.